All right, all right. Let's see if we can get anybody in here. Just want to do a little video. We are having today what is considered to be a Tuesday turnaround. We see that a lot in trading. Usually, if things go really south on Friday and Monday, Tuesday is a great turnaround day. And today is one of those days. So we're, yesterday it was looking like 75,000 was in play. And now here we are at 81,000. I don't know how high we bounce here. We do still have these tariffs that are not good. Trump's acting kind of like a spoiled brat, in my opinion, with these tariffs. But in the end, I don't think it really matters. I think, we have other things to focus on than Canadian energy tariffs or Chinese tariffs. These things don't matter, in my opinion. I think they're not great for the economy. I think we are going to go lower in terms of a recession, and I think there's a possibility of a recession now. But I think ultimately that leads to lower rates, and we have $9 trillion that need to be financed this year. I thought it was 7, but it's actually 9 from some new data. So if you have $9 trillion that needs to be financed in the next 12 months, well, you're going to need lower rates. Yeah, rumor about Zelensky signing the mineral deal. Look, I think anything to do with like end of the war in Ukraine, end of tariffs, return to normalcy, I think all that stuff's ultimately bullish for Bitcoin. The other thing we have today is from the Bitcoin Policy Institute, Saylor's giving talks, Senator Lummis is giving talks, Ro Khanna on the Democratic side is giving talks. And it does look like, there will be some form of, the Loomis bill coming back. So, it does appear that there will be some actual buying of Bitcoin, and how they do it. Maybe they sell some gold to do it. There's some talk of that. That would be revenue neutral, right? There's a lot of different ways of doing this to actually get more Bitcoin in, but it does seem like that's now that we're actually having those discussions again. And yesterday, it didn't look like that was sort of the case. So, I think that's really positive. I think we're going from sort of peak negativity to, oh my God, things may actually be really good under a pro-Bitcoin president. And so I'm very, very constructive on the market. So let's just take a look at kind of on the markets here where we are. 81.1 is kind of where the market is now. Let's look at the absolute low. Okay, it got down to 76 and change yesterday around 6 p.m. right after the close, right? And now here we are at 81.1. We've had a hell of a week, right? Hard to believe that, a week ago we were at 93,000 and now we're at 81,000. So I think we're in deeply oversold territory. The fear greed thing was off the charts. I mean, it was like great financial crisis, GFC, 2008 kind of levels. And now we're bouncing off the bottom. I think we go straight to 90 is kind of my gut feel. We also closed the CME gap. I'm not a chartist, but I'm just kind of repeating what the chartists are saying. So we closed this gap down here. So, we had the Arthur Hayes of this world sort of say that, 75,000 was going to be the low. But maybe this is it. Maybe this is the lift. It's possible, right? Print money to buy BTC. Well, probably they might print money to buy BTC. I think the other thing that really people have got to start thinking about is what is the impact of AI over the next 12 months, 24 months, and I think it's going to be massive. It's hard to believe that the entire public-facing concept of AI is only 800 days old. And I remember very well in late November 2022 when AI came out, right? That was pretty much the, that was sort of the peak of the things were really going down in Bitcoin land. So we weren't so focused on it. But I remember when it came out, and it seemed like it was like incredible, but maybe it was just like a parlor trick, right? People were like using it to generate these images. There was some talk about how it could sort of change the world, but I don't think people really understood how transformative this thing is, this technology is. I still don't think so, right? And so you've got the people like Chamath and company, and even Peter Thiel, who, as late as 6 months ago, 7 months, 8 months ago, were saying, yeah, it's kind of a bubble, we can't. I think these guys are wrong. It is not. It may be a bubble in terms of Nvidia, right? That stock might be a bubble, or may not be, right? But the impact that AI is going to have is just mind-boggling. And my personal view on this is it really formed not by just going to ChatGPT and typing random stuff in. That's not how I form my view. I've gotten very, very bullish by using Windsurf, and Windsurf is a programming kind of chat interface for building code with AI. And I've used Cursor.ai, but once you get onto Windsurf and you sort of see how Windsurf plus Claude, which is sort of the Anthropic, Amazon-backed AI, Claude 3.7 and Windsurf really already shows you that we are at a point where the AI can completely outthink you. So it's doing design decisions that are better than you, better than the best designers. It's just coming up with perfect design decisions. It's coming up with integrated test suites, checklists, project management, dashboards, all this stuff. It's far better than a team of software engineers. Now, I think, you take a small group of software engineers plus AI, and you can build amazing stuff. I think, and I'm gonna be unveiling something in about 3 weeks. It's gonna blow your mind. Okay, I mean, honestly, it will blow your mind. And the most amazing thing about it is how fast we put this thing together with this team of engineers, but really with this using a lot of AI. And I think when you sort of see that, I've done software development now for 30 years, and I've never seen anything even remotely close to what's possible now with AI. And so if it's possible with software engineering, it's possible with factory floor automation, it's possible with legal automation. Everything is going to get automated and replaced with AI. So the way I look at it right now is we have this last gasp from both the left and the right to try to protect jobs, right? So you have the left wing, and they're sitting there going, we need these government DEI jobs. We need to protect the longshoreman jobs and all the rest. Okay, so they're trying to desperately put that. Now, On the other hand, you have the Doge MAGA crowd that's saying, no, let's just go cut all that waste. And they're right. I mean, it's just an insane amount of waste that is in those DEI jobs. But they're saying, you know, what we need to do is we need to protect the American coal worker, the American, the American laborer, right, from all this cheap Mexican labor. So they're trying to protect jobs too. So we've got these two main forces in American politics that are just trying at their best to protect jobs. And meanwhile, we have this completely new, only 2.5 years old technology, which is about to replace every single job on the planet, really. I mean, that's ultimately where it's going, right? It's not stopping at 10% of the jobs. It's going to 90%. It's taking over, right? And, if you don't understand that this AI is coming for your job, you don't understand AI. Now, I view it as an amazing opportunity, right? So I think whatever skill set, whatever job area you're in, you can use AI right now. If you just bet on AI, you can use AI to triple your productivity. So I don't care whether you're in medicine, transportation, whatever you're in, you need to embrace AI because AI is going to make you just like a Superman. And so I really think, no job is safe. So, but if right now it's going to be the people who jump on board AI fastest who will get ahead. That's it. So, how do you do that? Don't ask me, ask AI. Ask AI to kind of craft your future in AI. And I think you will find that if you are on that leading edge of people who use AI to get ahead, you're going to do extremely well. As for Bitcoin, look, all this stuff's going to be super bullish for Bitcoin. But I just feel like, there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there who really who've been conditioned to inactivity, because what you don't want to do is trade your Bitcoin. You don't want to be trading your Bitcoin. You don't want to be buying and selling it. None of that is productive at all. So, but I think you have this amazing opportunity right now, which is to really get on board the AI train. And so, your best option with respect to Bitcoin is just look at this as just, okay, I'm trying to accumulate as many of these Bitcoins as I can. If I can use AI to get more Bitcoins, well, that's good. What's my unit of measurement? The unit of measurement is the Bitcoin. How many Bitcoins do you have? How many fractions of a Bitcoin? Are you at 1 Bitcoin? Okay. By definition, only 21 million of us can ever be at 1 Bitcoin. And actually, the number right now is just slightly under 1 million. There's slightly under 1 million people who have 1 Bitcoin. So, I think, look, this is a great thing. It's fantastic if you get it, if you understand the innovation of, complete digital scarcity that Satoshi invented, and you understand it, that's fantastic. Like, get to that understanding, and then do nothing. That's it, right? Just like do the least possible with your Bitcoin as possible. Just protect it, but do not do anything. If you want, you can borrow against it. I have some ideas on that, but you can borrow against it if you need extra cash. But I would not recommend trading your Bitcoin. And listen, I've sort of gone back and forth with my friend Josh Mandel. He's a brilliant trader, but I got to tell you, he's got the worst. He's got the worst advice for people to sell at 100,000 and buy at 80,000. It's really bad advice. Okay, let's just take that trade. Let's just assume you sold at 100,000. You sold all your Bitcoin. But you could have sold at 108,000. Nobody's going to do that. But could I have sold let's just say I sold some of my Bitcoin, okay, at 100,000. Well, guess what? I would have this just massive tax bill, right? That at 100,000, and then I go buy back at 80,000. Now I have this big tax bill. What if I actually bought those Bitcoin this year? I'd be paying 50% of that of those gains to the IRS. That makes no sense whatsoever. So what you want to do is do nothing and just let the compounding of Bitcoin go take you up over time, right? So you do not want to pay. And by the way, there's some non-zero chance that you're going to have a zero capital gains tax on Bitcoin. I would not put that. I'd say it's a high chance under Trump that you get a zero capital gains tax on Bitcoin. So how stupid would you be taking an ordinary income tax, paying that, having to pay that, right? And the worst possible thing is you might actually even, Bitcoin might end the year, for whatever reason, right? Might end the year down, right? And then now you're paying this tax and you're going to have to sell off more Bitcoins to pay the tax. It makes no sense, right? So, the tax standpoint is very, very, very important. You shouldn't day trade this stuff. It makes no sense. And anybody tells you that they have a trading system or that they recommend buying and selling or recommend hedging it with options, they're crazy. This is not what this instrument is meant to be, right? So this is a bearer instrument. Hieronymus says smash the state. I agree. Look, this is something where you have your Bitcoin, you hold it in your however you want to hold it, right? If you want to hold it as 12 words saved to the cloud somewhere, hey, maybe that works for you. I don't know. There's lots of different ways to hold your Bitcoin, but please don't sell it. I mean, that makes no sense. And so I think trading it makes no sense. Getting worried about it when it goes down makes no sense, because you buy this thing, you're buying it for the long haul. You presumably have read the white paper. Presumably you've studied Bitcoin. Hey, I wrote a book on Bitcoin, which I think is the best book on Bitcoin ever written. Ben and I wrote this book. Is certainly let me get this book. I'm going to show you this book. I'll be right back. All right. I want to show you this book, which I think is pretty amazing. Okay, this book came out 5 months ago. Ben and I wrote this. Look at the quality of this book. It's called The Big Bitcoin Book. Okay, and this is the first edition, and every single one of these books is numbered. This is number 1 out of 1,000. Okay, there we go. So this book, absolutely beautiful. Every single page of this book, every single diagram is just absolutely amazing. Like this is Taproot. Okay, now there are other books on Bitcoin, but nothing like of this quality. Here, look at that. That's Michael Saylor. Amazing book, right? This is the fall of the GBTC thing in 2020. 2021, sorry, 2021, 2022. Mike Hearn, one of the first Bitcoin developers, the block size wars, Gavin, the first Bitcoin major developer who took over from Satoshi, the block size. This is just great reading. It's not cheap. This book costs a fortune just to make, right? Let alone all the research and everything that went in it. And it's great. I mean, this book is fantastic. So you want to buy this book. We still have 450 of them that are still available. After that, that's it. It's done. So this is like, I consider this book a work of art. And listen, I'm very, very proud of this book. And, you know, at the end of the book, I put this thing, which I think is really good. Bitcoin is sort of the ultimate measure of everything. And that's kind of the way to think of it. So I would say, don't trade it. Your goal is to buy the Bitcoin, hold the Bitcoin, and hold it for probably as long as you live, right? If you can, right? So, you know, listen, I've owned this house that I'm in Los Angeles. I won't say where, but I've owned this house. I've owned it for 10 years. You know, I've owned my Bitcoin for almost 10 years. I don't want to sell things quickly. I've owned a castle in France for 20 years. And I'm going to be at my castle next week. And, you know, I'll do a little bit of a live video from the castle just to give you a little sense of what it was like to live, you know, in Renaissance France in the 1600s. You know, my castle dates from 1615. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is that Bitcoin is one of those things that's going to be there for the rest of your life. And if you sell your Bitcoin at 79,000 or 77,000, where it was yesterday, you're going to look back on this and you're going to be like, this is probably the single stupidest thing I've done in my entire life, was sell that back at 77,000. I am completely convinced you are going to look at that and, hey, Thomas, hey, let me give you a Thomas intro. I can invite you up. All right. Here, anybody want to go, you can kind of try here. There we go. There's an invite. Did you guys see that? All right, Thomas, you can join the invite thing. And anybody else want to join too, feel free to join my video stream. You can go to that. I think that's it. Invite guests, restream. Yeah, I think that should work. So I just think that, you know, this is like owning Apple computer back in 2000. Or the biggest thing you need to do is have a lot of time between the time you buy Bitcoin and the time you need to sell it. At some point, you will need to sell it, but you know, but you can. That's interesting. I sound like a sane version. I think Michael Saylor is very sane. But he speaks in a lot of metaphors, right? And you know, this digital energy stuff. And I think it's accurate, but it's a little confusing, right? Like, Bitcoin is not digital energy. It's not actually what it is. I mean, you know, energy is energy. Bitcoin, to say it, you could sort of say it's like digital energy, but it's not digital energy. It's not what it is. But that's a good metaphor. It's a metaphor, and it can be a little confusing. But I do think I think he's generally right. And, you know, I posted something on Twitter the other day, or yesterday, I think I posted it, which was pretty amazing. Let's go back to August of 2020. It was when MicroStrategy bought his first Bitcoin. August of did not come across. Okay, let me send invite to DM. Okay, let's do that. Hold on one second, guys. Here, send an invite. That's weird. I see. Maybe I can't do. Okay, I sent you a DM, Thomas. So, what was I going to say? I was going to say that. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Here, I'm just sending. Oh yeah, this is what I was going to say. So in August of. Hey Thomas, how's it going?
Hey, how we doing?
Good. So I was just saying, if you go back to August of 2020, that's when Saylor bought his first Bitcoin, right? Not him personally, but MicroStrategy. August of 2020. Bitcoin was at 11,000, okay? And that's when he did his first purchase. He had, at that point, a failing software business, and he had about, I'm not 100% sure whether it was 250 million or $500 million in cash, but that's basically what he had. He had $500 million or $250 million. I'm not sure which of those two. And you would think it would make a difference, but it actually doesn't, right? And that was exactly 4.5 years ago, right? And now he's sitting on $50 billion worth of Bitcoin and $7 billion of debt. So from his perspective, okay, he's taken a cash pile of $500 million, right, and turned it into something that's worth, let's call it let's call it $30 billion, right? That's like completely net. I'm not talking the value of his MSCR stock. I'm just talking about the value of his Bitcoin minus the convertible debt.
So prior to his orange pilling, I saw an interview where he talked about this idea of trying to time the market, and he used Apple and Facebook as an example.
Yeah.
And he said, can you imagine trying to time it early on relative to where it is at today? And he made the point of both of those companies were going. He made the point on Apple when they launched the App Store that he goes, oh, now it's going to change everything. Everyone's going to have. It's going to be pervasive across the entire world. Same with social media and Facebook. I think when he became orange, and so he said he made about $500 million doing that.
Yeah.
So when he became orange pilled, he convinced himself, and I think it's a valid paradigm, that Bitcoin would be as pervasive as Facebook and Apple in the culture, and it just takes time. It could take a decade. It could take some amount of time. You want to be in this investment for the asymmetric returns of 100 or 1000x. How far it goes is a debatable point. But we're not looking for 10 and 15% annual returns. That's a traditional, call it a TradFi, allocation of resources to generate returns in a stable environment. You're looking for asymmetric returns.
That's their dream. The reality is more like 8%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was not being specific about that. You're right. It's a much lower number, but people, not everybody, personality type is going to bet a lot on these asymmetric bets. And if we're right about Bitcoin, it is going to be all those things that have been talked about over the years around generational wealth and things like that. You have to believe that the digital transformation of the economy is going to include the digital transformation of money. And 100%. Right, no doubt about it. In fact, in my consulting business, when we were looking at workflow automations with things like RPA and things like that. Even prior to the GPT aspect, you still got into manual resource reconciliation of financial terms. So, like, think of like a company. They do batch processing for finance. It's once a month book close, right? And it's a reconciliation. It's looking at things. They're deriving revenue and expenses. They're doing things like accruals. These are all last century kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine a future where the financials are continuously derived algorithmically through an access to all data in the ecosystem, managed by an intelligent AI that allows a CFO running a company to look at his income statement, funds flow, and balance sheet in real time.
Ironically, that's sort of what Saylor's MicroStrategy, my understanding is. I've never used the product, but that's sort of what his product does, right?
I'm not familiar with their software business. If that's what they're doing,
it's kind of a corporate visualization. Like, give me a real-time picture of this company, like all the cash flows, everything.
When I worked at AT&T, I was in corporate finance, and I did a lot of deals and stuff like that. But in the corporate finance world, because of the way AT&T broke up in 1983 with that the breakup of the Bell system, the regional Bell operating companies controlled the local phone service, and AT&T back from the 80s and 90s controlled long distance. And so when we would sell long distance services, it would include that last mile, the local piece of it. In our nomenclature, it was called access, and it was a tremendous part of the income statement. But back then, because of the antiquated billing systems and working with 7 Bell operating companies, we could not know in real time or even within 30 days what our revenue was. So revenue was completely derived through algorithms. Now, happens to be here in Bedminster, we had 160 smart PhD types doing econometric modeling, and they were looking at all the indicators, and they wanted to estimate revenue so that they minimize prior period adjustments. But it would take 90 to 120 days to actually figure it out. And so that group was there, and it was a huge group. Same thing for access. That access cost, we're trying to reconcile all the pieces, became an opinion, not a fact. Now we fast forward to 2025, and we have powerful AI tools, the digitization of the economy, and this stuff can be done in real time. And think of it one step further beyond the real-time visualization. Now imagine I have a smart enough AI where I can run what if scenarios as the CFO of the company. Should I raise prices in this region? Should I cut this product line? What would happen? What would it cost me to go after certain market share? Do I have the funds flow to do this? Should I refinance this? Should I lease or buy? All those kind of analyses become optimizing rules where you can run a variety of scenarios. So back to what Saylor's saying is, he's saying, look, the digitization of the economy and the money side is going to have a huge Bitcoin element to it. And I'll go back to his Nashville keynote. When he projected $13 million as his base case by 2045, he was projecting it as a store of value. If you go back and look at those charts, the money, which is the transactional component, stayed off to the side. And he was very clear over the last year not to encroach on the money side of what Bitcoin's potential is. He knows there's a potential for Bitcoin to replace money in a transactional form, but he starts calling it digital property, and he's focused on the asset store of value side. He doesn't want to go fight that battle because it's hot with politics. So in his presentation, he shows the money side, which is transactional utility, growing side by side with Bitcoin going to 13 million. So in that sense, we know that Bitcoin is going to have a utility component. It's going to be part of an L2 architecture where things get settled at a Bitcoin layer, and it's going to be part of the transaction ecosystem. That is accretive to his hypothesis of where he says Bitcoin is going to go from a store of value. 13 million is the flippening of gold as a store of value and moving into other things like art, stocks, bonds, and other things like that.
Well, I think there's two kinds of stores of value, right? So one is, okay, or maybe a better way to think of it is there's store of value and unit of account, right? And then there's sort of this gradation between the two. There's one is I've got some money that I've accumulated through my pension, through my retirement, through years and years of hard work. I sold a company or something. I've got this bucket, right? And now how do I invest the bucket, right? Now, Bitcoin's coming into that world and saying, okay, I want a little bit of that bucket. I want to get 5% of the bucket of retirees, people of our generation. I want to have some of that bucket, right?
Right.
And then there's this other thing, which is, okay, this very transactional world, right? Between B2B and B2C, right? And C2C, right? The sort of, and now, you could sort of say, well, I'm going to use it as a unit of account, right? Because I'm going to send you something. I'd like to denominate what I'm going to send you in sats, right? So you worked a day for me, great. That's going to be worth, I don't know, 1 million sats, right? So I'm going to be sending you the equivalent of 1 million sats. Well, maybe I won't send you actual sats. Maybe I'll send you, I'll open a channel on the Lightning Network and I'll send you the sats that way. And you can get them, you can settle that layer later. Maybe I'm going to send you some wrapped Bitcoin on something like Solana. And yeah, it's not real Bitcoin. And you can accumulate a whole bunch of it and then move it back to actual Bitcoin.
Right.
And you do have this risk of wrapping, right? Maybe I'm going to send it to a Cash App type custodial wallet or a JP Morgan, right? System. And, that wallet has the capacity to say, I've been accumulating some balances in that thing. I'd like the actual Bitcoin now, And so I think yeah,
you're talking a lot about the how. And to me, there's a what element to this, which is unit of account is a cultural thing. Like people think in dollar terms. Like, one of the issues, even in the US, think about how hard it was to try to get the US to switch to the metric system.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Fahrenheit, I think in miles and yards and feet. I don't think in meters and Celsius. I just don't. I know Europeans do and the rest of the world does. I just don't. When I go to Europe and I go to a restaurant, I'm thinking, how much is this in dollar terms?
What you think matters less to what do the machines think. Like
that's true.
I think we are headed into a world where people don't matter. I mean, I hate to say this, but we are obsolete. Look, I mean, we are dinosaurs. We literally in every sense of the word, we are dinosaurs, and we're about to be replaced with the mammal, like little ferret that's kind of like crawling outside the thing. And this new mammal thing is better than us. It's faster than us. It's more agile than us. We're big dinosaurs and we think of ourselves as very important, but we're not that important. The machines are what matter right now.
So we have ways of communicating as humans. We have words. We have the written word. We communicate with computers through computer code, Python, etc. But then it ultimately gets translated down to machine code. There's interesting examples. If you remember that movie Her that came out about 12 years ago, there's a scene in it where Scarlett Johansson, as the operating system, is talking to Theodore Tromley and says, "I find myself living in between the words of your sentences, like that. It's just too damn slow." And there's examples where they've allowed AI to work with other AI at machine speed, unencumbered by humans. And as soon as that starts, they immediately flip to a new language.
There's a great little video I saw being shared on YouTube. And basically you have this machine coming, "Hi, I'd like to make a reservation. I'm doing it on behalf of Thomas." And then I talk to you and he goes, well, actually, I'm also an AI, and and I'm doing it on behalf of Fred, And then it's like, oh, great. So we're both AIs. Can we speak to gibber speak? It'll be a lot faster than talking in English.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
then the bits are flying,
So think of, in that sense, the language, or the unit of account for language, the unit of account for money, moves to something that is more optimal for machine to machine
But
speed.
it's not dollars, because at that point the machines are worldwide, right? So this notion of a border or a currency makes no sense. And I'll tell you another thing that makes no sense: the notion of KYC. You don't have these machines? Well, can you please do a selfie? Like, can I see your machine passport? No.
Right.
There is no KYC. This whole notion of FinCEN and these financial crimes and KYC and Bank Secrecy Act. I hate to say it, Elizabeth Warren, because she's been pushing all this nonsense, right? But this stuff, you're fighting last year's war, right? Or I don't know, 10 years ago. You're fighting the idea that drug lords are going to come in or terrorists are going to plan the next Twin Towers.
But it's a reaction to something new and unfamiliar.
Yeah.
So you put in all these prohibitions and rules.
But you can't, if literally what we're saying is to transmit value from point A to point B, you have this thing in the middle that's called point C, and it needs to get everybody's, it's like the Germans, in those old movies going, Papieren, Pizza, Papieren. You can't have these robot intermediaries that require passports to send money from A to B.
It's inefficient, and we're likely to go back. We're going to get to a digital world that's similar to the analog world in terms of the architectures. If I walk in with $20, I can walk into a convenience store. They don't ask who I am. They take the money, and I get coffee and a sandwich. I could have stolen that money. I could have used it to acquired it illicitly. We accept societally that $20 bill can be used without encumbrance.
Right.
That will come. That will come in the digital world. But we still live in a nation state world where the nation state wants to maintain its positional power. Now, what happens with all these digital technologies is there is a loss of power and control, but they see the tools there to actually hold on to it. But we're going to innovate around it. We have to work through
the speed of innovation. It's kind of what you were saying. Look,
yeah,
we have these governmental speeds, and the speed of government is the slowest thing on the planet, right? It's sort of like, it's like, I was once I was flying in India, and I read this, I'm reading the in-flight magazine, and they talk about this guy who lost his arm on a flight. Okay, lost his arm. Okay, and he also had a copy of Lotus 123. And then he said, he spent the next 2 years of his life going back and forth between the bureaucracy at wherever he lived, in Mumbai or something, right? And trying to get compensation for his lost arm. And then finally, they awarded him nothing for his arm, but they awarded him a new copy of Lotus 123. And I was reading it, and he spent the guy was complaining that he spent 2 years of his life going back and forth with maybe they gave him $1,000 or something. I don't know, $100. But it was insane. That's what the Indian bureaucracy is like. It's just, insane. So I feel like we're living in these bureaucratic things that have sort of degenerated down to have you ever read any Franz Kafka?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of where we are with these bureaucracies. They make no sense. Elon is trying to dismantle them because they make no sense. And meanwhile, we have AI that's moving. It'll be super intelligent within 5 years. That's where we are going. It's so, we can try to pretend that we have some time, but we don't have any time. Like, this stuff's going to move so fast.
Well, I would tell you, Fred, I think what's happening a little bit is, humans are analog creatures. We think in analog terms, linear terms. People are creatures of routine, and then that manifests in organizational bureaucracies that have those characteristics at scale. Now, the pace of change in the digital world is exponential, and it's unrelenting. Our ability of our systems, and I don't mean systems in a computer sense. I'm talking about economic system, social system, political. Those human systems cannot keep up with the pace of change.
No.
And you see it all over the place, where you see dislocations of things. Now, I posted earlier, I don't know if you saw it, the picture of the research that we did about impact to first and second year lawyers in terms of how much AI can do on the top 6 functions. And it's like 50, 60%. And I've reviewed this with some of the law firms in New York, and their reaction for the most part is to prohibit its use. But that prohibition is a temporary phenomenon. Eventually, you're not going to be able to keep up with it. It's going to keep moving. And you see how
they prohibited the use of Arabic numerals in the Middle Ages, right? They literally said, I'm sorry, long division is not allowed. No, we're not allowed, because it's going to
long division.
Abacus workers out of work. Literally, that's what they said. There was like these abacus guilds in Germany, and they were like, no, we can't have this, modern algebra, because that's going to hurt the job of, the counters. They need to kind of like move those abacus things around.
So this resistance is real, and it cannot be ignored. It is something from my consulting perspective is what we try to frame up, put on the table, and discuss openly, and say, if you want to have the benefit of the change, we need to address the existing ecosystem and resistance to that change. And I don't underestimate how powerful it is. I mean, over my shoulder, I have that book that I wrote, Digital Labor. I wrote that in 2019, predicting a lot of these things. And back then, I was just way too early. I was so focused on the technology potential that I underestimated the resistance to that change. Now we're starting to see it happen at scale. And what's happened in the meantime is the technology is unrelenting. It keeps coming. Think about where we're going to be in 1 to 2 years. Now, I think you posted earlier, ChatGPT's been out for 800 days, 900 days?
840 days.
So just think about how far it's come. And that's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Now, in 1 year will exceed all of the change up to this point. That's what exponential means. And so you're doing all this coding stuff.
Yeah.
Add 5 helpings of agentic AI or agency to that. Now all of a sudden you're going to be out hanging out with Ben in Santa Monica, and you're going to come back and it's going to be done. You're not even going to be at the monitor doing it.
Like right now, a lot of what I do is just press accept.
Right.
That's it. And like we joke that basically we need to write a screen scraper that just goes, and whenever it sees the word accept, it just presses. Like that. I mean, it's very rare that I say, no, you're on the wrong path. It's just accept.
Now, think of what if you actually did what you just said, where you don't need a screen scraper. You have a code policy that says, don't ask me, just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you come back, you go to France for a couple of weeks, you come back. What have you created?
Well, for example, you can. So look, I tried that with the writing of a book, right? I tried to do this Da Vinci set. Now, it's capable of writing 1 page of the book, no problem, right? No problem, right? But it's having a hard time putting all the pages together and remembering everything and putting the whole book together, right? Now it can do a couple pages and says, great, would you like me to continue? I said, imagine this character named Claire, you know, she's a quantum.
Right.
And then it's like, would you like me to continue? Yeah, continue. Yes, continue. But then, you know, it forgets where it is and stuff. So for these long projects, it can get kind of lost in its own, doesn't have a lot of checklists and stuff, you know, it doesn't have it. So like part of the thing when you do a PhD, part of the hard part is thinking about the whole project, right? You know, the whole thing. And it's just like any other big thing. Writing a big book is like that, right? Like you have to think of the whole picture of the book, right? And AI is having a little bit of an issue, and I'm sure it's temporary, right? I'm sure within a year you will be able to say, I want you to write a book start to finish on the Da Vinci Code. I would like you to make some really interesting things. I'd like you to study these other books and find out what's good about them. And then I want you to check your work. I want to make sure that the whole thing, soup to nuts, the plot sticks together, that the characters are well developed, and that the ending is fantastic. And I want you to make it ready for TV. And I don't want you to ask me any questions. I just want you to do it and come back with a 300-page PDF. I'm sure, 100% sure, the AI will be able to do that in a year.
Yeah, that is an architectural outcome. So right now, and I'll use a movie metaphor, the AI is a great actor, but it requires a director and a producer.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as I say, fine, I'm gonna move into a multi-tenant AI world, architecturally, I'm gonna have great AI actors, AI directors, and AI producers.
Right.
And then I'm going to have an AI studio head. Now, what's the studio head going to do? The studio head is going to permission you into lots of data environments. So imagine you say, I like this movie, this TV show, that book. Here's my iCloud data. Make a show that's derivative of all the things I like using my life and my characters in my world, and render that on Netflix in my private account. And because I want to watch that. Now, before you waste a lot of resources, show me the trailer. Yeah. If I like the trailer, then give me a 12 episode season. And now all of a sudden, Netflix is not in the buying content; they're in the rendering content world.
And it could be entirely personalized.
100%.
You know, like it's an audience of one that's going to be looking at this movie.
Right. And if I create something interesting, maybe I syndicate that through my social media feed, through my subscription. I say, oh, fine, you know, pay 50 cents and you can go do this. And now all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting subscription revenue enough to cover my cost of.
It's interesting you say this because JJ, who was at Bitcoin First, JJ, he's the AI Tau guy, the main investor. Yep. Got $100 million in Tau or more right now. He just put out a tweet today, and he's like, "Isn't it interesting that we don't have AI movie studios yet?" That's literally, you could check that tweet out they put out. So I think there's other people thinking the same as us right now, you know.
But it's so Midjourney, Sora, Kling. Yeah. These are manifestations of creating AI-based video.
Right.
It's pretty good, but it is extremely resource intensive.
Right.
But it will get there. And again, just now fast forward out to 2030 if you need to get more time, because 2030 will be here soon.
Yeah.
In 2030, all of this AI studios will be there. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to be into is the resistance to that change will be actors are going to start to say, you can't render my likeness without me. This already happened with Scarlett Johansson on OpenAI. The Sky voice on the voice interaction on ChatGPT was going to be Scarlett Johansson. She said no, and they basically mimicked her voice with AI, so it sounded kind of like her. It was really cool. I loved it. And then they got into legal issues and they just took it off and they used something else.
Well, you don't need the actual human. You could just create an AI version of a human that doesn't exist and that is maybe more likable than the any human that ever did exist.
The voice interaction I use when I'm driving in the car. So I'm driving down the road and I say, you know, tell me about Marbury versus Madison. Why didn't Jefferson fight that battle better? You know, and you have a conversation about whatever the hell you want to talk about. And when you're driving, you're having just a conversation with the AI. I typically can only do that if I'm in a car by myself because no one else wants to hear it. But it's great. I use that voice feature all the time. But that's an example of where you see some resistance. Actors are going to see they're going to fight that battle, and what's going to end up happening is you're going to create actors who don't exist. So there's no one to pay a royalty to, and we're going to reimagine. They're going to go back to these old libraries and they're going to reimagine these shows. Imagine, Fred, how much would you pay personally? I'm going to guess you'd pay north of $1,000 if I could render The Godfather and have you let's say you be Michael Corleone.
Sure, why not?
Or it'd be rendered as you with your voice.
Yeah.
Everything else is the same.
Yeah.
You'd easily pay $1,000 for that. That would be a great thing. It'd be a lot of fun if you're a big Godfather fan.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. It could be whatever. Those things are going to happen, and they're going to happen by 2030. How fast it happens, I don't know, but the technology is moving fast.
You said how fast? By 2030.
But I mean, like in the meantime, it could happen sooner than that. So I follow the guys that are doing like Mid-Journey, Sora, and it requires a higher level of technical skills to do that. But that's all coming down. All those barriers, just like coding, it's all coming down, and we're going to see a tremendous thing. But it's, earlier this morning you were writing about digital, the world of abundance. I think we're going to see massive abundance.
I got to tell you, when all that whole thing first came out, the theory of abundance, I was like, my first reaction was, this is bullshit, right? Like, this is like. And then, I read Peter's stuff and everything. Now, I've got to meet Peter many times. Like, Peter Diamandis. I've spent some time with him here in LA, right? And he's actually having one of these abundance, events. Summits coming up. So I may go to it.
Where's he doing it?
I don't know. I have to, I gotta look into it. I know that, George from Bitfury, he's going to that. I know he was telling me about that because,
you should, if you get invited, you should definitely go. I mean, I
can definitely get in to that because I'm not good friends with Peter, but I'm friends with his friends.
Yeah.
Very good friends. So I can get into, I think, look, I would like to, and I'd like to actually, it'd be interesting to kind of take Peter a little bit on, he's been on with Saylor, so he's been on, but, there's a lot of Bitcoiners. He can learn a lot from us too. You know what I mean? Like, he and I've had many conversations with him about Bitcoin, but look, a while ago, like 4 years ago, you know what I mean? Like,
Peter
he wasn't convinced. I was telling him like I got into a big argument with him about 4 years ago. I was like, look, Peter, I was like, this is, we don't need another coin. This is going to be the unit of account. It's going to be Bitcoin. And he's like, oh, really? Why do you think so, Fred? And I'm like,
the thing is, Peter is a polymath. He's a medical doctor, right?
Yeah.
And he opines on anthropology and technology and other things like that.
Right.
I think he's one of the founders of Singularity University. And so I would not even want to argue the point about Bitcoin with him. I would abstract it more and talk about the digitization of currency and money in the ecosystem of the broader things, because his interests are broad and vast. Like, he's very interested in things like the guy out of Harvard, Sinclair, who's working on epigenetics with respect to longevity and I don't want to say immortality, but basically treating aging as a disease versus a condition. And
well, here's where he came from is that he remember the X project, right?
yep,
The X project at one point, this was back in 2018,
right,
okay? The X project was thinking about doing an X token.
interesting.
So, yeah, so they were like, okay, how do we do this token? How do we sell this token? So I remember I met him first then because they were like, okay, Fred seems to know about wallets and tokens, so let's bring in Fred. And so I spent 2 full days with Peter on like tokens, blockchains. This was back in 2018, and then so he's always had this idea of like, how can I use a token, right? And then it was sort of like then we entered sort of the dark age of tokens, like thou shall not have tokens, that
You
thou
should,
shall not
if you,
transact, illegal securities. And now I would say probably the time is probably okay for an X price token. You know what I mean? He probably could do such a thing right now if he wanted to.
I would definitely, if you can, Fred, get yourself there, and I would encourage you to go with 2 parts listening, 1 part speaking, meaning that you want to see what other people are doing and try to synthesize that into a broader thing. I went to an event similar. It was KPMG put it together in La Jolla,
Okay.
and Ray Kurzweil was there and a few others, and we end up having maybe 60 people in the meeting. So it was a small meeting, not unlike what we did in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And very interesting conversations then. And I'm going to go back. This has had to be 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And we got a real sense of what's happening. Kurzweil is a very interesting guy.
Oh, you met him? Yeah. Wow.
I've just met him that one time. That's the only time I know him. But I'm familiar with his work and his thesis. And he again, he's an interesting guy. He's interested in similar things that Diamandis is interested in.
But I was going to say, so my first reaction was, this is complete bullshit, and I'm going to go on the other side. I'll take the other side of this trade. And then kind of ever since I've seen AI, I've just been like, okay, they were right. I was wrong. They were right. And look, AI is a continuum, right? There was AI in the 70s, right? Marvin Minsky and so on, right? But it's a continuum, but it didn't become completely clear until November of 2022, right? That it was really at this point.
Yeah, and the reason is because I worked in the industry, and I was working with IPsoft, and they in 2013 they had probably the cutting edge of some of this stuff, but they were using recursive neural networks, and it didn't scale. And you look back at what GPT did, and you look back and say, wait, it really was a simple change. I mean, the positional encoding of the ingestion, the attention mechanism, those are the 2 main things. You're like, wow, that seems simple in hindsight, but it broke through and allowed for scale. So like back then, we were only able to ingest, say, a 500 word document, and then it would have 95, 96% clarity of recall. And that 5% was annoying, but you could fix it with, like, I'll give an example of where it struggled with. It couldn't figure out conjunctive language. So if I said, Fred Cougar is a Bitcoiner and lives in Santa Monica, and then you'd ask it, where does Fred live? It struggled with that, right? So that was just the way it was encoded in the neural networks. What the positional encoding did is it solved all that at scale, the attention mechanism, the whole 9 yards. And so now we're off to the races, and it was a tremendous breakthrough. The next breakthrough is not ChatGPT 5 or 6. The next breakthroughs will be architectural. It will be AI on AI violence. It'll be back and forth. They're going to be fighting, and you're going to be able to stack multiple AIs in a ecosystem. What we saw with DeepSeek we saw an architectural manifestation that had performance levels that rivaled the big AI complexes. So where you have OpenAI having this huge footprint, they ingested a gajillion tokens. DeepSeek was much less, a fraction of that, but had similar capabilities. But it was architectural. Now, because it's open source, everyone else they're adopting that architecture. So if you play around with Grok and do the deep research or the DeepSeek, whatever it's called, and then OpenAI has the same thing. Grok is faster, but they take a while to generate the answer, and the answer is like a term paper.
Right.
Have you played around with that the deep research?
No.
So if you go into ChatGPT, you hit the deep research on Grok. It's the same thing. I forget exactly what the term is. You hit those things, and what it does is, like on Grok, it'll show you what it's doing. It may go out and research 20 references, 20 source material, and synthesize that. And if you're doing research, gosh, I can't even imagine how awesome this is, because it gives you the sources, it synthesizes it, and it's going to totally transform the way we do things. Like we had, our friend Darkside, right?
Yeah.
Talking with him, he developed an AI bot that basically synthesized all this medical data because he had some back issues, and he pulled it all together, synthesized it, and developed and took his own data and developed a script for him to go to his doctor and sit down, and they had a much more sophisticated conversation, and the doctor was kind of blown away at the information that he brought to the table.
Right.
And that had the effect of improving his quality of his medical care. Now, just take that across the entire ecosystem of life. We're going to see tremendous stuff going on here. And I would just tell you that the next breakthroughs will be architectural, will be the agentic AI, how we get this stuff going. You won't have to hit accept anymore. You'll just tell it ahead of time, accept everything for the next 3 hours while I go do hot yoga, and then come back and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, look, ultimately, this is incredibly good for the economy and GDP. I think in the short term, it's bad for GDP because useless government jobs are going to be taken out of. There's going to be pain before there's gain, I think.
Yeah, this is probably where I probably don't fully agree with Diamandis on the bold and the abundance. Those two books go together. How many poets does the world need?
Poets?
I'm just picking something. What are people going to do with their time? They're going to write poetry? I mean, if I take away the mundane jobs,
yeah.
Let's use the bell curve as an example. The people on the backside of the bell curve, it's half the people.
Yeah.
What the hell are they going to do? And I'm not saying they can't do anything, but I'm saying we have to think about it societally to make sure that the world we create that is full of the abundance that Diamandis articulates includes a positive vision for everybody, or a super majority, so that you don't have societal division and problems. There's no joy in being successful if more than half the people are suffering.
We're just gonna decrease the retirement age to about 12. You're 12 years old, you're retired. Thanks. Great.
You still have to contribute to society somehow. You still have to be able to do something with your time, to have some purpose.
Yeah.
You talked recently, and we chatted about it, is you just can't sit around like you got a Bitcoin stack. You just can't sit around and look at it and watch it grow. You got to get off your ass and do something, to go contribute, go make something, go whatever the hell it is. You got to have a purpose. And it's not just, seeing how high you can get your wealth up. That, I think that's going to be an old paradigm. I think people, I want to encourage people with the resources and capability to figure out how they contribute and bring everybody along.
Well, I think we will contribute if we get, look, part of the thing is, are they going to fix the potholes on the FDR? You know what I mean?
Right.
Seriously, like,
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, like, with all this AI and anything else, there's always like pothole. Every time I go to New York, there's a pothole on the FDR.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's graffiti and there's all this kind of stuff. So, that seems to be like an unsolvable problem. It's harder to solve that than Fermat's last theorem, evidently, right? Because if solved Fermat's last theorem, they cannot solve the pothole on the FDR problem. So how do we solve those problems? How do we clean up New York City?
So there's an old story that goes back to Queen Elizabeth I, and the guy who invented the sock loom, that mechanized the textile industry in making socks.
Yeah.
He presented his invention, and was like, "Wow, we can save all this labor and we can crank out materials and socks really fast, right?" And then the court advisors basically said, "Your Majesty, we're going to put all these people out of work." And then they put I think like an arrest warrant for the guy who came up with it, and he had to flee to France.
Oh, really?
To avoid, and again, and then eventually the sock loom came out and all this happened. But the Luddites that are famous, that culture, the anti-technology, that still pervades society in subtle forms.
Yeah.
So the people who are doing the potholes today, they're like, "Yeah, I do the potholes. Well, you're not doing it fast enough. You don't have the resources. Let's have bots do it or drones do it."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, I don't want that. I'm going to lose a job." Well, all right. Well, what we need as leaders is to articulate, what is that person who's disaffected by a technology replacement? What are they going to go do? And for the most part, people are fearful of it, and as a result, they fight it.
Why not play games? I mean, literally, like, play video. Look, I go to the younger people. What do they like to do? They play games. That's
Right.
That's our main activity, right? I mean, I have a 17-year-old. I think he spends 5 hours a day playing video games. That's just what they do, Like, I feel like playing games is an occupation that is social and that engages people, and people seem to like to do it. So,
but you still have to contribute. I mean, your son's able to do that because you support him. Where's the support going to come from for the adult who wants to do that? The universal basic income?
yeah.
I used to be hostile to that idea. I'm not so hostile to it today. I think all the manifestations of UBI where they've tried it has not worked. But I think the idea has to have some merit, because I don't know how the back half of the curve is going to survive the coming onslaught of the technology, because it's happening so fast and so pervasive.
I mean, I think that your best metaphor for how this is going to happen is going to be like, Star Trek, right? And you want something. What kind of food do you like? Okay, let me just press a button. Okay, lasagna. Great. Would you like? It just makes it on the spot. Like, I feel like that's where that world of superabundance is coming, right? And we're going to be there. And what do people do? Well, like in Star Trek, what do? They go explore new planets. They study things for the sake of studying them. They play games for the sake of playing games. You don't need to have a. I think the idea that you need to be involved in making things is probably obsolete. Like, machines should make the things, and we should just consume the things, I think.
Yeah, I think, Fred, I think what I'm arguing for, and again, I'm not suggesting I have the answer, but it's as much of a spiritual thing. Like, what is your purpose? When you wake up every morning, what's your purpose? If your purpose is to be an eater, a consumer of things, and not a contributor of things. And a contributor could be in a subtle form, helping somebody in your life, or doing something constructive, or anything that society then values to validate your activity, to give you purpose.
You know, I mean, that's great. Everybody should learn to play an instrument. It's fantastic. It's great. It's great. You know, look, I think, you know, there's, you know, if I was purely a man of leisure, and, you know, I've like on the scale of things that I feel like I'd like to do better. Right now, I want to learn AI better. That's like,
yeah.
You know, that's my number one thing. Like, I'd like to really get deep into AI, right? In terms of like pushing the frontier. But, you know, I would say if you asked me that question 5 years ago, it'd be like, be really good at jazz piano, or you know, or you know, Baroque piano. Like that would really that would be something I would get an enormous pleasure out of, right? Not because I want to show off or anything, but just like I'd really like to completely master Bach, right? Like I just feel like, you know, it's you know, or get really good at chess. You know, Ben's really good at chess, you know. And so, you know, Ben, you know, I'm good at chess, but I'm not as good as Ben now. You know what I mean? Ben studies the thing so much, and he plays the stuff, and he comes up with these moves that, you know, the brilliant moves. And to me, I think that's purpose enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's good enough, right? Like writing the big Bitcoin book, good enough. You know what I mean? Like these are good enough things to do.
Well,
you know?
let's go to the Bitcoin book. I know you guys put a lot of time into it. It probably had to take you close to a year to do it, right?
There we go.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Yeah,
a lot of work on doing it. That is the definition of contribution. You contributed to the ecosystem. People get a lot of joy out of doing it. Fantastic. It's great. But everybody needs to have that.
What?
Everybody needs to have something that they're contributing. Otherwise, you're gonna have no purpose. You gotta, again, nothing wrong with a life of leisure, but it can't be completely defined by that, because the leisure gets boring.
Right. The leisure
if it's not interspaced with the toil of work, and I don't want to say drudgery, but the toil of work and deferred gratification. If you don't have that, then you can't enjoy the vacation or the nice meal or whatever the hedonistic thing you want to go pursue is.
Right.
If it's all hedonism, you're gonna not be happy.
So just do it, like Nike said, right? Just do it. But I think that's it. Like, you know, coming up with things that are hard. You know, it's like Kennedy. Why do we go to the moon? Because it was hard.
Right.
You know? I think I'm butchering his thing, but, you know, not because it was easy, but it was hard. You know, why did you climb Mount Everest? Because it was there. You know, it was climbable. You know, like
that's kind of what I want Trump or whoever his successor is to really lead this country to focus on rebuilding this country from the ground up, the infrastructure, everything about the society, just build it up. I mean, I look around, I see, you know, neglect. You mentioned potholes on the FDR, but take that and extend it to everything. Improve everything in our system, the infrastructure, the hospitals, the schools, the towns we live in, the real estate we live in, our relationship to the environment.
Point where we literally have a choice. We can either say we embrace the old world or we move on to the new world. And, you know, to me, it's sort of like we've been given this gift of AI, which, you know, there has never been an invention like this. This is like this is kind of man's final invention, right? The ability to outthink us. This is the ultimate invention. And I'm so happy that I've lived to see it. You know what I mean? I'm just like, you know, I'm just thrilled that we're finally at an era where whatever I'm doing, whether it's math or, you know, prediction markets or something, you know, or Bitcoin books or whatever it is, I can have AI help with that. How great is that? This is a great, great period of our lives. But now we have to take that And we have to turn that into how can we use this amazing new tech to build just a utopia, right, around us, right? And we can, but we have to stop worrying about Canadian tariffs in Greenland and Panama, and on the other side, DEI hires and reparations and all this other crap. I think we're just fighting the wrong war here. Like these things are not important. Like, I mean, my dad's family is from Wisconsin, but I don't really care about the Wisconsin cheese industry. It doesn't matter to me. It seems pointless, man. Wisconsin cheese, I don't care. But anyways, I got to hop. I got my DSU. It's 10. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, we'll see you later.